Greetings, loved ones. Today we're going to do part 2 and continue talking about the cycles of violence. It's really important to get these messages out, so please subscribe to our channel so you don't miss a single one. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and hit that like button, and please share these messages with others, because you never know, just by sharing these with others you could save a life. Victims of violence often suffer not only from the effects of physical or verbal abuse from their partners, but also from well-meaning individuals who make statements that can be hurtful. Without realizing what they're saying, friends, relatives, or acquaintances, they might actually end up blaming the victim for the abuse. So I want you to understand that any statement that takes the focus off of the abuser and places it on the victim is extremely damaging. Examples of this are, why doesn't she just leave? Or, what did she do to make him mad? Another example of victim blaming is embedded within the well-publicized Tennyson building explosion model of the cycle of violence developed by Lenore Walker in 1979. So let's look at this tension building explosion model, as a big word, or simply the cycle of violence. In 1979, Lenore Walker, author of The Battered Woman, developed the tension-building explosion model of the cycle of violence. She based her cycle on research conducted on 120 battered women. The cycle has been used since that time in countless books and articles to indicate what is happening in the lives of abused women, and it involves 3 stages. The first stage is the tension-building phase. During the tension-building phase, the abuser becomes more temperamental and critical of the victim. As the tension escalates, the victim feels as if she's walking on eggshells. She may try to placate the abuser to prevent the abuse. Then there's the acute explosion phase. The abuser verbally or physically attacks the victim, and this is much more intense than during the tension-building phase, and may increase in intensity with each explosive phase. Then there's the honeymoon phase. The batterer expresses remorse over his behavior and promises to change. The batterer is charming. He may offer gifts such as flowers, jewelry, perfume, and candy. And the abusers do not harm their intimate partners because of tension and stress. I want you to understand this. As humans, each of us feels stress and tension in our lives, and yet we do not make the choice to abuse someone else. If it were a matter of tension, the abusive person would be unable to control his behavior and would batter whoever was causing the stress, i.e., the boss who yells at him, or police officers who pull him over, etc. Also, abusers would not be able to control where their punches landed. Many abusers target punch their partners, specifically looking for areas where the bruises and marks are less likely to be seen: on the neck, on the back, on the upper torso, and the legs. And abusers will normally blame the victim for the abuse, saying if she would just keep the children quieter or keep the house clean, there would be less stress in the household. It becomes the victim's responsibility to keep the abuse from happening. And due to our socialization process, it is common for women in our society to feel responsible for making a relationship work. So there's another cycle after the abuse that the victim goes through, and it's called the separation cycle. So this is actually for the women who actually do leave. They have a cycle that they go through too. A lot of them return and then get captured in the cycle of abuse again, and then they might leave, and then they're in the separation cycle, and some of them will never go back and some of them will. On average, I believe it's stated that a woman leaves 7 times before she finally leaves. Many don't make it that far. So here's the separation cycle. When a woman leaves her abuser, the abuser goes through a process of emotions and behaviors that is quite predictable. This is the separation process. There's indifference. At first, the abuser says things such as, "Go ahead and leave. I don't care. I've got lots of women after me and I don't need you." Then there's manipulative anger, and now the abuser is showing his anger. This anger is a tool that abusers use to gain and maintain control. If there are the children in the family, for example, he may claim his outrage is because the survivor is keeping the children from him, and I demand the right to see my kids. And then he'll use that as more abuse against her. And then there's manipulative courting. The abuser tries to hook the victim back into the relationship, and they succeed most often than not. The abuser begins to court the survivor again, perhaps with a trip down memory lane. Oh, remember when we met? Remember when the baby was born? He then promises to change. I'll quit drinking. I promise I'll quit drinking. I'll go get counseling. And he won't discuss his choice to use abuse. He'll talk only about past good times and the promise of good times to come. And then he says he wants her back. And then there's defaming the survivor. He tells lies about the survivor to everybody who knows her. His goal is to isolate her socially and to wipe out any support she might have among friends and family. And many times, the woman doesn't know about the lies. He's talking about her and she doesn't even know it. One of the most common lies is that the woman was having an affair, a lie that he can use to justify his violent behavior. So then there's renewed manipulative anger. Once he recognizes the survivor's not coming back to him, he renews his manipulative anger. And this is when the victim may be in danger. The abuser is more likely to carry out the threats that he has made during the relationship and earlier in the separation cycle. Leaving a violent relationship is a difficult decision because the victim doesn't want the relationship to end. They want the violence to end. They also might be economically dependent upon the aggressor. And this is why we must help the victim leave her violent relationship and begin a life of peace and healing. The question is not if you will encounter a victim of violence. The question before God is, what will you do when you do encounter them? You know, you could be the person who saves a life. You're called. We are all called to be champions for justice. Those who suffer violence need to know that those who love them and those who don't even know them will step out and reach out to them to give them the courage to leave before it's too late. This series is dedicated in honor of Gabby Pettito and all the other women and children who have suffered violence and or may be missing. If you're a victim of violence, I really want you to listen to me and I want you to hear this. You are valued. You are loved. You are intelligent. You're beautiful. And God does not want you to suffer violence. He wants you to live free from violence. Abuse is not love, and there is a way out. If you're a victim of violence and or if you find yourself in a dangerous situation, dial 911 immediately for help. But also reach out to somebody. There is someone out there who will help you. And please, for those of you who aren't victims of violence, help get these messages out. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss a single one, so that you can learn about this. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and hit that like button. And please share these messages with others because you never know, you might just save a life. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about how survivors of abuse cope. So until then, God bless you.